Mga idol at kabayan, Pangulong Marcos Jr. kinumpirma na kapag merong nasawing Pilipino, militar, Philippine Coast Guard o civilian man dahil sa pag-water cannon ng China, ito ay isang act of war. Ito ang magiging hudyat o basihan para ma-invoke ang 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty sa pagitan ng Pilipinas at Amerika.
If a Filipino citizen is killed by a willful act, that is, I think, very, very close to what we define as an act of war. Is that a red line? Almost certainly it's going to be a red line.
Pangulong Marcos Jr. muling binuhay ang katapangan ng mga Pilipino. Sinabi ng Pangulo na gagawin nito ang lahat upang ipagtanggol ang mga teritoryo ng Pilipinas.
In this solid footing and through our clear moral ascendancy, we find the strength to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereign home, to the last square inch, to the last square millimeter.
Dagdag pa ng Pangulong Marcos, ang katubigan ng West Philippine Sea ay nananalaytay sa dugo ng bawat Pilipino. Hindi nito papayagan ang sinuman na magtangkang ihiwalay ito sapagkat ito ay ang pag-asa ng bansang Pilipinas.
The life-giving waters of the West Philippine Sea flow in the blood of every Filipino. We cannot allow anyone to detach it from the totality of the maritime domain that renders our nation whole.
Mas lalo pang napahanga ang mga nakasaksi sa talumpati ng Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas. Hindi yuyoko si Pangulong Marcos. Ang mga Pilipino ay hindi isusuko at yuyoko kahit kanino man.
As President, I have sworn to this solemn commitment from the very first day that I took office. I do not intend to yield. Filipinos do not yield.
French Navy na sa Pilipinas. Nakahanda ang French Navy na magsagawa ng live fire drill sa katubigan ng Pilipinas kasama ang Philippine Navy.
We have made a conscious effort to align our definition of our territory and our maritime zones with what international law permits and recognizes. This has been inscribed in Article 1 of our Constitution. As Senator, I was proud to co-sponsor our Archipelagic Baselines Law, which defines the basis of our maritime jurisdictions. As President, I look forward to signing our Maritime Zones Law, which will clarify the geographic extent of our maritime domain. Our efforts stand in stark contrast to assertive actions that aim to propagate excessive and baseless claims through force, intimidation, and deception. In the West Philippine Sea, we are on the front lines of efforts to assert the integrity of the UNCLOS as a constitution of the oceans. We have defined our territory and maritime zones in a manner befitting a responsible and law-abiding member of the international community. We have submitted our assertions to rigorous legal scrutiny by the world's leading jurists. So the lines that we draw in our waters are not derived from just our imagination, but from international law. We have on our side the 1982 UNCLOS and the binding 2016 arbitral award, which affirms what is ours by legal right. In this solid footing and through our clear moral ascendancy, we find the strength to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereign home, to the last square inch, to the last square millimeter. The life-giving waters of the West Philippine Sea flow in the blood of every Filipino. We cannot allow anyone to detach it from the totality of the maritime domain that renders our nation whole. As President, I have sworn to this solemn commitment from the very first day that I took office. I do not intend to yield. Filipinos do not yield. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not only unyielding in protecting our patrimony, our rights, and our dignity as a proud and as a free country. We are also firm in our commitment to regional and global peace. We renew this commitment at this turbulent juncture of our history. I will repeat what I said at the United Nations almost 2 years ago. Amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel. Our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and of justice.
President Marcos, I'm going to ask you a very direct question, if you don't mind, which is, if Chinese Coast Guard water cannons killed a Filipino sailor, would that cross a red line? And then can you also give us a sense of what are the actions that would trigger a request from Manila to Washington to invoke the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty? Thank you.
To go back to the first question, what would happen if there was an incident that ended up killing a Filipino serviceman, be they a Coast Guard or in the military and part of the Navy? Well, that would be that would certainly increase the level of response, and if by a willful act on a Filipino, not only serviceman, but even a Filipino citizen, if a Filipino citizen is killed by a willful act, that is, I think, very, very close to what we define as an act of war, and therefore we will respond accordingly. And our treaty partners, I believe, also hold that same standard for when the actions, with the joint action, will be undertaken in support of any such incident in the Philippines. Once we already have suffered injury, but thank God we have not yet gotten to the point where any of our participants, civilian or otherwise, have been killed. But once we get to that point, that is certainly, we would have crossed the Rubicon, certainly crossed the Rubicon. Is that a red line? Almost certainly it's going to be a red line.
I suppose it will involve live fire?
To be honest, I'm ready for it, but it will be in the Philippine territory, so let's see for the permission I will have to operate my fires in your territorial waters. So that's another discussions we may have based on your regulations in your territorial waters. But if I'm authorized to, I will be pleased to share a fire exercise with the Philippine Navy. That's a good step of interoperability to be capable of conducting gunnery exercises.
The exercises that you will be holding with the Philippine Navy after the port call, will it be in the South China Sea? And will it be anywhere near the Spratlys or Scarborough Shoal maybe?
To be honest, I don't know exactly where it will be because we are still organizing it. We have a first planning process this morning, and we'll do a second one on Monday. I think it's going to be quite close to your littoral because it's a reduced ambition exercise. Reduce why? Because we're coming together quite recently on this exercise. That's not a big exercise such as Balikatan, which takes months to plan to gather so many assets. So now it's more something that we could do on a short notice, and that's great to have that in mind because being able to operate with two different navies on a short notice is also something that we want to be capable of with the Philippine Navy.
Laban Pinas.